योगेन चित्तस्य पदेन वाचाम् मलं शरीरस्य च वैद्यकेन योपाकरोत्तं प्रवरं मुनीनां पतञ्जलिं प्राञ्जलिरानतोऽस्मि आबाहुपुरुषाकारं शङ्खचक्रासिधारिणं सहस्रशिरसं श्वेतं प्रणमामि पतञ्जलिं गुरुर्ब्रह्मा गुरुर्विष्णु गुरुर्देवो महेश्वरः गुरुः साक्षात् परब्रह्म तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः हरिः ओम. So in the previous session we looked at Sutra 4.32, which was Tata Kritarthanam pariṇāmāparāntanirgrāhyaḥ guṇānāṃ. And the context of this was something called dharma meha samadhi. So this is a highly evolved and purified condition, even of viveka khyati, where we say there is a shower from the cloud of dharma that is cleansing all the mala in the chitta. So there are no gaps, where we had seen tachchidreshu means in the gaps. So here there are no more gaps. All the impurity is removed. Therefore it is a sarvavarana malopetam chittam or sarvavarana malopetam guṇānāṃ. That was in 4.31. So all covering, all impurities have been removed. And then tataha, it was said, the gunas, their sequence of transformations, pariṇāma kramaḥ, that ends. In the sense that, as we know, gunas and prakriti, their role is to provide bhoga and apavarga for the purusha. That is experience and liberation, some sense. So now that is done through various transformations of the gunas. And it was said in the previous sutra that the gunas have achieved their purpose. So they are now called kritarthaha, those that have achieved their purpose. And therefore the pariṇāmakrama ends. So that is known as pariṇāmakrama samaptihi. There is no need to undergo transformations after that. So today we look at the next sutra, which brings in a technical point for clarification. The sutra is Ata koyam kramo nameti, asks Vyasa as a preamble to the sutra. It is okay. In 4.32 we said that the parināma krama has ended. But then what exactly is this krama? That is the question that may come to someone. That is answered by 4.33, that says kṣaṇapratiyogī pariṇāmāparānta. So pariṇāmāparāntanirgrāhyaḥ kramaḥ. So what is this krama? It is kṣaṇapratiyogī and it is pariṇāmāparāntanirgrāhyaḥ. So let's look at these terms. What does that mean? So in answer, the sutra is saying krama, which in English we would call it a sequence or an ordering or a set of successive transformations or a successive ordering, successive elements. So this krama is kṣaṇapratiyogī, which means it has a correspondence to moments. So it has a correspondence to a sequence of moments, successive moments in time. It is a kṣaṇapratiyogī. Furthermore, pariṇāmāparāntanirgrāhyaḥ. It is grasped, it is understood when the set of transformations corresponding to those moments in time are over, or towards at the end of the transformation, that krama is grasped or identified, and that is krama. So that is the characteristic of what we could call as krama. So this is an interesting point in the sense that not any arbitrary set of successive moments and not any arbitrary set of transformations will be known as krama. Okay, krama is something that has a correspondence to successive moments and then can be discerned at the end of those transformations. Okay. This also gives a clue of how the notion of time and the changes with time, transformations, is conceptualized in the Yoga Shastra. Okay. So now we look at Vyasa's Bhashya. Vyasa begins by saying, kṣaṇa anantaryātmā pariṇāmasya aparāntena avasanena grāhyaḥ kramaḥ. So kṣaṇa has an anantaryam, means one coming after another. Now this is the very nature of krama. Okay, so when we say anantaryātmā means the svarūpa of the krama, the very nature of krama is the kṣaṇa-anantarya, the successive arriving of moments in time. And pariṇāmasya aparāntena avasanena. Pariṇāma means transformations. So when the end of the transformations happen, that is when that krama is understood and grasped. So this is what krama is. He continues, nahi ananubhuta kramakṣaṇāः navasya purāṇata vastrasya ante bhavati. So now there is further elaboration. It's as if you take an example of a piece of cloth that turns from new to old, which is a transformation. That is not going to happen if that piece of cloth did not undergo or did not experience all those moments in time where that happened. So what is being elaborated is the set of transformations and the sequence in time are both highly correlated. The transformations won't happen if that sequence in time has not been experienced. Now comes an interesting point where he says, nityeshichva kramo drishtaha. So the cloth is one example, but he says even in things that are nitya, that is eternal. So in the philosophy, there are a few things that are seen as eternal. Purusha is eternal, Prakriti is eternal, and so on. And different schools will have, like in Vaisheshika Shastra, Anu, the atom, is eternal, and so on. It says, Nityeshu cha kramo dushtaha. Even in these eternals, the krama, or this sequence of time and transformations, is seen. Now we get into these nitya, the eternal substances. So we move into day to day to something that is philosophically conceptualized. So he says, dvayi cha iyam nityata, kūtastha nityata, pariṇāma nityata cha. So this nityata, this eternalness, is of two types, which is kūtastha nityata and pariṇāma nityata. Kūtastha nityata and pariṇāmi nityata. So we will see what these two terms mean in the subsequent lines, where I'll clarify that. Tatra. Now this kūtastha actually is a little bit about that term. That term comes in the Bhagavad Gita and you might have heard it in other places as well. So it is interesting to see it brought in the Yoga Sutra and Vyasa Bhashya. and then clearly determined what it is. So he says, Tatra kūtastha nityata puruṣasya pariṇāmi nityata guṇānāṃ. So this kūtastha nityata is of the Purusha. And the pariṇāmi nityata, which is eternal yet changing. Pariṇāma means change or transformation. That belongs to the gunas. So the Purusha is also eternal, the gunas are also eternal. But the Purusha's eternalness is a very different one. It is kūtastha. The eternalness of the gunas is very different. It is pariṇāmi. So a little bit before we go further on this term kūtastha. There are one or two different interpretations based on how that word can be split and understood. But the most common one is the one where kūta means what's known as the anvil. Anvil is that implement on which someone like a blacksmith, one working on heavy metal, iron, etc., will keep the other metal object to be manipulated, sculpted or whatever in his workshop. That will be kept on the anvil and using hammer, chisel, etc. that will be worked upon. So the thing to be understood is, on this anvil, other things are kept and changed, hammered, chiseled and changed. But the anvil serves as a support, the adhara, where the anvil itself never changes. So the anvil forms the adhara for all the changes being made by that blacksmith, because it is by placing the object on the anvil that all the changes are being made. However, the anvil itself does not undergo any changes, even though all that activity is happening on it, where it is the adhara or the support. So it is a aparivartita nityata. So it is something that is eternal. I mean, this is by analogy. This is not to say that every anvil itself is eternal, but just like in the anvil, with respect to the other metal items being worked upon, the anvil could be said to be relatively permanent, unchanging, and in that particular frame eternal. Broadly, the kūtastha nityata refers to kūtavat tishtati iti kūtasthaha. So it remains like an anvil and therefore it is kūtastha. It does not undergo any changes, even while changes might be happening elsewhere or on the anvil as its support. The anvil itself never changes. So this is an eternality which is devoid of any change. And here, therefore, it is said kūtastha nityatah puruṣasya. And in contrast, pariṇāmi nityatah guṇānāṃ. Gunas, on the other hand, are constantly undergoing changes, and yet they are eternal because they continue to exist as gunas. So this is kūtastha nityatah and pariṇāmi nityatah made clear by Vyasa.
So, one should recall that we had considered the concept of kṣaṇa, moment, the infinitesimal unit of time. This was discussed in earlier sutra in the 3rd chapter. Kṣaṇatat kramayoh samyamat vivekayam guṇānāṃ. So we had encountered the word kṣaṇa on an earlier occasion, and we discussed what is kṣaṇa. Kṣaṇa is moment, and moment is infinitesimally finite unit of time. So we cannot be taking cognition of moments. Each moment cannot be cognized. Just we can cognize a minute, second, microsecond, nanosecond, hour, day, week, month. So we can cognize this. We can know that this is 1 hour, this is 1 minute, this is 1 second. or this is 1 nanosecond or 1 microsecond, well, it is not able to, we are not able to get the feel of one moment. Because it is indivisible unit of time, it cannot be further divided. So, moment, the kṣaṇa is a metaphysical term. It's the time, which is metaphysical concept. So we have the concept of time, which is chronological time, psychological time. So that can be computed. So we know that an hour has elapsed, day has elapsed, a minute has elapsed, minutes have elapsed, seconds have elapsed. But we will not be able to ascertain about the moment. So it is metaphysical unit of time. So that's kṣaṇa. So that should be recalled here as to what is this kṣaṇa. Now the aphorist is telling us here, kṣaṇapratiyogī. Now if the kṣaṇa cannot be cognized, what can be cognized? The counterpart of the kṣaṇa can be cognized. We can get the feel of it. We cannot feel each moment. We can feel the counterpart of kṣaṇa, which is pratiyogī. kṣaṇapratiyogī pariṇāmāः. So we are able to feel the pariṇāmas, that this is getting older and older, so on and so forth. So the kṣaṇa is not cognizable, but its counterpart, other side of the moment, is pariṇāma, and pariṇāma is cognizable. Therefore, we know something is old, something is new, something is this much new, something is that much old. So the moment should be placed in juxtaposition of pariṇāma, kṣaṇapratiyogī. Therefore, it is pratiyogī. Pariṇāma is pratiyogī. So that is what is being mentioned. And moment are not cognizable, it is nirgrāhyaḥ. However, the pariṇāma, it becomes cognizable. It's not every change of it matter, but sometimes we will say this was a new cloth, sometimes back, now it is older cloth. But its journey from newness to oldness cannot be cognized. However, we know something is new, something is old, something has changed the form. It is because of the pariṇāma. So what point is that we have to understand, kṣaṇa is not cognizable, it is a metaphysical concept, but it is what is in counterplace of it, a counterpart of it is the pariṇāma, and pariṇāma are cognizable. If not moment to moment pariṇāmas are cognizable, pariṇāmas are cognizable. It is because of succession of moments. A thing changes by time, but that doesn't mean that we can see the changes taking place moment to moment, moment by moment. The succession of time, the moments, we can say that the matter has changed. The point is the counterpart of moments is pariṇāma, and that is cognizable. Although not cognizable moment to moment, but with the time elapses, we can certainly know that this has changed. The matter has changed, old to new and new to old. So in that context, Vyasa is defining nitya. There are two nityas, as you just now heard. Prakriti is nitya, purusha is nitya, entity of purusha is nitya, entity of gunas, prakriti is also nitya. But then what is the distinction? One is kūtastha nityata, the other one is pariṇāmi nityata. The matter will ever remain matter, however in change forms. But then something which is eternally nitya, which is purusha tattva, and you heard the example of anvil. The anvil will dent all the metals kept on it. It can pound the metals, it can dent the metals, it can process the metals, it can change the form of metals. But there is no indentation on the anvil. So, similarly, the Purusha is kūtaṣṭha. Another meaning that comes about the kūtaṣṭha, the kūta means the things which are not meritorious, infamous things. So Purusha is embedded in all infamous things such as phases of Prakriti, Buddhi, the Mahat Tattva, the Ahankar Tattva, and all the modifications of Prakriti. It is inside it. It is indweller of all Prakriti, phenomenal Prakriti, changing Prakriti. So therefore it is said to be kūtaṣṭha, another meaning. Kūta means bad company. So the bad company of Prakriti will be always there. So that is another meaning of kūtaṣṭha. So the Purusha has kūtaṣṭha nityata and Prakriti has pariṇāmi nityata. The Prakriti will be changing from stage to stage, phases to phases, from oldness to newness, newness to oldness, or from one form to another form. The matter is ever changing, it is fleeting flux. However, the gunas are nitya. The inherent matter, the matter which is gunas, the gunas are nitya, so that is pariṇāmi nityatvam. So what we were trying to see is that there is kūtaṣṭha nityata and pariṇāma nityata. The kūtaṣṭha nitya doesn't have changes, but it is cause of all changes. The changes are caused around it, on it. The Prakriti which is on the Purusha Tattva, that is changing constantly. The Purusha doesn't change. Therefore, Purusha is immutable principle. It cannot be dented. It cannot be modified. It cannot be changed. So that is the metaphysical principle of Purusha, which Bhagavad Gita often tells us. How it is apariṇāmi. Patanjalas also have often mentioned it is apariṇāmi. So the changes will take place on account of it, over it, due to its presence. So it becomes like anvil, and over the anvil, the material Prakriti is constantly changing from newness to oldness, from one form to another form. Matter is changing. The point is the pariṇāma krama is cognizable. If not moment to moment, at some stage we will say that the matter has changed. This was old, this was new earlier, now it has become old. It was fresh earlier, but now it has got muted. It has got mutiny. So the things are ever changing, which are made up of Prakriti. However, Prakriti itself is nitya. So nityata has been described here, while the pariṇāmas are being also considered. So that is what we have to take note of here. The Prakriti is changeful, constantly changing, ever changing, but then it is eternal. It is eternal insofar as gunas are concerned, it is eternal. The Prakriti is also eternal, Purusha is also eternal, but doesn't succumb to changes. It is like anvil. Everything, every metal is dented on it, shaped on it, pounded on it, but the anvil doesn't get even a dent. So similarly, this Purusha is without any indentations of pleasure, pain, pleasure, delusion, happiness, delight, sorrow, worry, excitement, etc., etc. All these things happen to the mind, which is material, Prakriti. So these changes are taking place, but however, metaphysical Purusha is changeless. It is like anvil. So that is why the concept kūtaṣṭha has been described, and kūtaṣṭha nityatvam. Now we are going to discuss the pariṇāmas which are going to take place. So in earlier sutra, we saw that pariṇāmāparāntanirgrāhyaḥ. Pariṇāma krama would stop. And therefore, pariṇāma krama stopping means it goes to pratiprasavaḥ process. Like if you are driving a car, you are in forward gear. If you want to go in reverse gear, you have to stop the car. Not stopping the car, you cannot put the reverse gear and take the car in a reverse direction. So what is going to happen for kaivalya is the gunas are going to take a journey in a reverse form. And for that purpose, it has to stop. All along it was on forward gear. Now for kaivalya, it has to go in opposite direction. To go in opposite direction, the gunas have to stop for a moment. Like car has to stop at least for a moment to go into reverse gear, reverse motion. So pratiprasavaḥ will be now discussed. The reversal journey will be discussed, and therefore it entailed that pariṇāma krama samapti should be mentioned. Coming to neutral in a car is important. So that's how we are trying to comprehend the topic that is going on. Okay.
Yeah, just to be clear, so the kuta also stands for falsehood, asatyavachanam, maya, a delusion, etc. Hence that another interpretation of the term kutastha. There is also a third interpretation where kuta is sort of the peak of a mountain, parvata shringa. So it's like a rock sitting atop a mountain where there are changes happening around in the slopes of the mountain, etc. The rock at the top remains there unchanging. So that is another drishtanta or example of the term to elaborate on the term kutastha. Okay. So now to continue. Yasmin parinamyamane tattvam na vihanyate tad nityam. Now a brief definition of what is nityam. What is this eternal? So even while changes are happening, the tattva, the underlying substance, does not get destroyed. That is eternal. Ubhayasya cha tattva anabhighatat nityastvam. So in both these cases, Purusha and the gunas, the underlying tattva, since it never gets destroyed, both are eternal. Tatra gunadharmeshu buddhyadishu pariṇāmāparāntanirgrāhyaḥ kramo labdhaparyavasānaḥ nityeshu dharmeshu guneshu alabdhaparyavasānaḥ. So here Vyasa is saying, in terms of the guna dharmas, which means the attributes or things that arise and are made up of the gunas, such as buddhi, etc. So the buddhi, the manas, the indriya, the sharira, in the ultimate analysis, they are all made up of gunas. Now those here being referred to as guna dharmas, because they are dharmas of the gunas, whereas the guna is the dharmi. So this buddhi, etc., they are undergoing transformations. And that transformations, in the end, they'll come to an end. And that is what is kaivalya. So that krama obtains an end. Kramaḥ labdha paryavasānaḥ means the krama comes to an end. However, nityeju dharmishu guneshu alabdha paryavasānaḥ. So as far as the gunas are concerned, they continue to exist. They remain. So it is buddhi, etc., buddhi, indriyas, bhutas, etc., they may come to an end. But the gunas themselves, who are the dharmis, they never encounter an end. So they are known as alabdha paryavasānaḥ. And therefore they are eternal. So if somebody had a doubt, that is also being clarified. So this is in the case of the pariṇāmi nityata, the eternality, the changing type of eternality. Now we look at the kūtastha nityata, which is the unchanging eternalness. So kūtastha nityeshu svarūpapratiṣṭheshu mukta puruṣeshu svarūpāsthita kramena eva anubhūyate iti tatrapi alabdha paryavasanaha. So in case of the kūtastha nitya, unchanging eternal, which is svarūpapratiṣṭhā, which means it is established in its own form, as in the case of the mukta puruṣas, the purusha considered by itself in its state, unattached, quote unquote unattached, so to speak, to the prakriti, not in conjunction with the prakriti. The svarūpāsthita, the being in its own form, that is also kramena eva anubhūyate. There is also a krama in the sense of there is a notion of existence in time, and therefore tatrapi alabdha paryavasanaha kramaḥ asti. So there also there is this notion of krama which never comes to an end. So just like in case of gunas, the eternality, it never comes to an end, and therefore is alabdha paryavasanaha. In case of the purusha considered by itself also, there is a krama even in its remaining in its own form, and that krama also is alabdha paryavasanaha, never coming to an end. Now how is this described or understood? He says shabda prusthena, in terms of expressing in words or language, it is expressed as asti kriyam upadaya kalpita iti. So this krama is described in terms of the asti kriya, the verb to be, like we say is, exists, to be. So that also is considered a verb, as though it is an action in terms of words. So using this asti kriya or asti, it is described in terms of words, and this is how it is conceptualized. So the krama is conceptualized in this way. So it is said kalpitaha. So essentially Vyasa is saying whether it is a changing eternalness or an unchanging eternalness, there is a krama, and it is an unending krama. So alabdha paryavasanaha. In case of changing eternalness, there are actual changes happening. In the other case, we can consider the asti, just to be, being, as qualifying that krama. Okay. So now Vyasa brings up another interesting question. He says, Atha asya samsarasya sthityagatya cha guneshu vartamanasya asti kramasamaptirna va iti. So he is asking, okay, there is this kūtastha nityata, unchanging eternalness, pariṇāmi nityata, changing eternalness. Now, all said and done, with regards to this samsara, the world process, the creation, sthitya, in terms of being and changing, etc. Guneshu vartamanasya, this creation that exists on the support of the gunas. Is there an end or not? Is there a krama samapti? Is there an end in that sequence or not? That is the question. Because we have heard all these things, the purusha, the prakriti, how it is ending and so on. But in terms of the world, is there an end to the process, to the world process or not? Vyasa answers, he says, avachaniyam etat. It cannot be directly answered in this manner. Katham, how come? Asti prashna ekantavachaniyaha sarvo jato marishyati. So, he gives an example. He says, okay, there is a question that is ekantavachaniya, in the sense that it expects a single answer, like a yes-no question or a binary question. For example, let's say, sarvo jato marishyati, anything that is born, does it die? So the answer is om bho iti. So it is a yes. Okay. Now the next question. Ata sarvo mritva janishyate iti. So does everything after dying take birth again? So as I says, now this is not a yes-no question. Vibhajya vachaniyam etat. So now this has to be answered by splitting that question, by dividing that question. So, pratyudita khyatihi kshina trishnaha kushalo na janishyate itarastu janishyate. So one who has obtained the khyati, the viveka khyati, who is free of desires, kshina trishnaha, kushalaha, who is a yogi, is not born, but everybody else is born. So while the first question was ekanta vachaniya, sarvo jato marisha, everybody born, do they die? Yes. But the second question, sarvo mritva janishyate, everybody after having died are they born? That is no longer a ekanta vachaniya, directly answerable in yes or no, but has to be split and answered to say, to those who have attained khyati, free of desires, they are not born, everybody else is born. Why is Vyasa saying all this? Because he is pointing out to the question that was asked, that does the world process ever come to an end? He's saying that question is not a direct yes-no question. And to be able to establish that, he is giving these examples. Another example of a slightly different nature, he says, Tatha Manushya Jatihi Shreyasi, is the birth as a humankind, is that meritorious? Is that great? Nava Shreyasi, or not meritorious, not great. Ityevam pariprashte vibhajya vachaniyaha prashnaha. Again, if asked in this way, this is also to be answered by splitting or dividing. How? Pashunuddishya shreyasi devan rishinscha adhikritya na iti. So considering animals, etc., it is meritorious and great. But with respect to devas, rishis, etc., it is not. Which means the question as to is it meritorious is a relative term. So one has to know relative to what, and then it can be answered. He says. Now back to the question of does the world process ever end? He says, Ayantu avachaniyaha prashnaya samsaro ayam antavan atha ananta iti. So this question, that the samsara, is that something with an end or one without an end? So again the answer is kushalasya asti samsar kramaḥ na itarasya iti anyatara avadharane adoshaha. So this has to be asked and understood in a different way. And the way to understand it is, so that is anyatara avadharanam. The way to understand this is, no, it is not a question of does the world come to an end or not. But it is with respect to a kushala, which means a yogi who has come to a point of kaivalyaṃ, there is a samsara kramaḥ. The world process does come to an end, because for that yogi who attains kaivalya, the world process no longer applies. However, for everybody else, the world process continues. Tasmat vyakaraniya eva ayam prashnaha. Therefore, this question also has to be analyzed, split, and then answered. So essentially the position on this question, does the world process come to an end? It is not an objective question about the world process. It is with respect to whom. So the seer, the experiencer of the world, is an integral part of this question. So with respect to an experiencer or a seer who has come to the point of kaivalya, it does come to an end. Whereas to everybody else who has not yet come to that state, and therefore will continue the birth and death cycle and so on, the world process continues forever. So that is the answer to that particular question, and the broader understanding of the term krama that has come. So this whole sutra is a sudden insertion of a highly technical point, while one is talking about the journey. As we had said, we were talking about the journey of the yogi to kaivalya, and we had come to the point of viveka khyati, further refinement to dharma mega samadhi, and then this mention of the pariṇāma krama samaptihi. Therefore, the doubt, okay, what is this exactly? What is this krama? And then Patanjali and Vyasa took the time to take us into this whole concept of krama, and that is 4.33. And then that takes us into the very final sutra, which is 4.34. So here we take a pause. We say, okay, the concept of krama has now been covered and understood, so that as one finishes the reading of the whole text, one is sure to have covered all the key points.
So the point to be noted in the passage that we went through just now is the interesting aspect of labdha paryavasana and alabdha paryavasana. So these are two technical terms that we encountered in the passage that we considered just now. So labdha paryavasana means we know that the end of the thing can be understood, can be cited, can be experienced with respect to, say, impermanent things like cloth material or material things. They have the stages such as potential, actual, latent. So everything will be traveling from potentiality to actuality to latency, like a piece of cloth. The piece of cloth comes out from the mill, and then it is potentially there in the earlier material, and the cloth is weaved and spun. But the cloth doesn't stay permanently. The cloth will become older and older and older and rotten, and then that cloth will be torn or will be destroyed, will be getting destroyed. So these stages like potential, actual, and latent, these things can be experienced with respect to all matters. But when you cannot experience that, it is alabdha paryavasana. That's the case of purusha. The purusha is eternal, sanatana, aparanami. It doesn't go through changes. It is ever as it is. So alabdha paryavasana is with regards to prakriti as well as pradhana, the primordial matter. The primordial matter is in equilibrium, 33.33% of sattva rajatama, that's the equilibrium. So it doesn't undergo change. Only when the proportions are disturbed, then the creation starts taking place. So pradhana and purusha are alabdha paryavasana. You will not see different stages in them. That this is the old purusha, new purusha, and now it has become old purusha. That was a strong purusha, and now it has become weak purusha. Nothing of that kind. The purusha tattva is ever the same. Changes cannot be cited. So also the pradhana tattvam in cosmology is such alabdha paryavasanam. But once it is creation phase, then you will see mahat, ahankar, tanmatra, panchamahabhutas, indriyas, shariras, they all come about, and then they also get destroyed. So that's an important technical point to be noted, and of course we just have understood the relativity. Is the purusha the supreme kind of being? So you cannot answer either yes or no. It is better than subhuman form, but it is inferior to superhuman forms, the gods and rishis. So that's how the pariṇāmas are also classified, and therefore you cannot be having a binary there, yes or no. It has to be, question has to be split, and then necessary statement has to be made. So the pariṇāmas are of different kinds, and that is what is being mentioned. Now in the light of kaivalya that is going to happen, ultimately we will be seeing the pariṇāmas, how they happen. That is in the next sutra. Okay.
So now, introducing the next sutra, Vyasa says, Gunādikāra kramasamāptau kaivalyaṃ uktam tat svarūpam avadharyate. So he says, this Gunādikāra kramasamāptau. When this Gunādikāra krama, that is the activities of the purposeful activities of the gunas and the sequence of that comes to an end. That is known as kaivalyaṃ. So we have seen kaivalyaṃ earlier also in the different sutras. Now in the 4th chapter, we are seeing a very detailed view of this kaivalya in terms of exactly what is happening in the chitta, in the purusha, etc. So in this context, we see, we have come to this level of detail, like a microscopic view, where we are able to see the mechanism of kaivalya, and that is being said as the Gunādikāra krama samāpti. So the end of the Gunādikāra krama, the sequence where the gunas were performing purposeful acts for bhoga and apavarga of the purusha, once that comes to an end, that is kaivalyaṃ, says Vyasa. And now he says that svarūpam avadharyate. Now that the svarūpa, the nature, the form of it is being clearly established in this sutra that is coming next. So that is puruṣārthaśūnyānāṃ guṇānāṃ pratiprasavaḥ kaivalyaṃ svarūpapratiṣṭhā va citiśaktiriti. So here, the gunas which are now puruṣārthaśūnya, the gunas that do not have any purpose with respect to the purusha anymore, because all the avidya, klesha, karma, etc. has gone away, dharma mega samadhi has happened, bhoga, apavarga, etc. is complete. So they have no purpose with respect to the purusha anymore. Therefore, there is pratiprasavaḥ. So their configurations as chitta, buddhi, mana, indriya, etc. no longer serve any purpose. So the gunas sort of dissolve back into the prakriti, or the formations of the gunas as chitta, etc. has been dissolved back. So they become just gunas once again, and that is known as pratiprasavaḥ. So they had evolved into these configurations and patterns to function as bhutas and indriyas. Now they are going back into the original state of the prakriti, that is known as pratiprasavaḥ, and that is kaivalyaṃ. Then he says svarūpapratiṣṭhā va citiśaktiriti. Or this can also be from the point of view of the purusha, which is the citiśakti. It is the svarūpapratiṣṭhā, being established in itself. So that the conjunction that of the citiśakti with the prakriti, that has now come to an end, and that is a svarūpapratiṣṭhā. So for example, in the 2nd chapter we have seen tad abhāvāt sañyogābhāvo hānam tadrishehe kaivalyam. So when the sanyoga ends, when avidya ends, the conjunction with prakriti ends, and when that ends, it is the kaivalya of the citiśakti, or of the drashtra shakti. So tadrishehe kaivalyam. Now similarly here it is said that when the gunas, so this is a more high resolution microscopic view, it is when the gunas dissolve back, or they undergo pratiprasava, that is the kaivalya with respect to the gunas, and with respect to the citiśakti or the purusha, it is the establishing in its own self. So that is svarūpapratiṣṭhā of the citiśakti. So now, let's also just remind ourselves of the 3rd chapter where we have said sattva purushayoho shuddhi samye kaivalyam. So when they are equally pure, equally shuddha, which we have seen while talking about the 55th sutra of the 3rd chapter. Let's just recall that as well, because when it is all the vidya has gone from the chitta, so that it becomes as pure as the purusha, and with respect to the purusha, any contact, any conjunction, the prakriti has faded away, kaivalya happens. So there the state was described. Here the process is described in detail. Okay, so that's the ultimate, the final sutra of the text. Let's look at Vyāsa's Bhashya. Krute bhoga apavargānaṃ puruṣārthaśūnyānāṃ yah pratiprasavaḥ karyakaranaatmanāṃ guṇānāṃ tat kaivalyaṃ. So what is the kaivalya of the gunas? This is the kaivalya of the gunas. Okay. Now which gunas? Gunas that are krita bhoga apavarga. So they have performed the bhoga apavarga. So all purpose they have performed. Puruṣārthaśūnya. Therefore they have no artha, no purpose with respect to the purusha. So that artha is now shunya. So it is zero. No longer exists, no longer applicable. Their pratiprasavaḥ. So any special configurations and special arrangements as karya karana. So for example, the buddhi evolved into ahankara. So there is a cause and effect. So all these evolution to form cause and effect, etc., has now gone away. So they were the atma of the cause and effect, because they are karya karanatmanah. So ultimately it was the gunas that formed the self of all these things. So their pratiprasava happens. So they go back, or the laya back into prakriti, and that is guṇānāṃ tat kaivalyaṃ. That is the kaivalya for the gunas. Now, svarūpapratiṣṭhā punah buddhi sattva anabhisambandhat puruṣasya citiśaktireva kevala tasyaha sada tathaiva avasthanam kaivalyaṃ iti. Now it has come to a point, the citiśakti, that it is not going to once again get enmeshed, so to speak, or get into the sambandha with the prakriti, again with buddhi and so on, the buddhi sattva. So that sambandha is not going to happen anymore. And therefore, the citiśakti, that is the purusha, is completely established in itself. And it will remain that way forever, in that pure state without any contact with the chitta, with avidya, etc. And that is the kaivalyaṃ with respect to the citiśakti. So here ends the entire text. It says that all this prakriti purusha coming together, and then the chittamala removing, and on the way many other siddhantas, principles, clarifications being described, including all the siddhis or vibhutis of the vibhuti pada, the real nature of prakriti and its various evolutes, buddhi, ahankara, the role of yoga, the upayas on how it operates, how it brings about the shuddhi, including ashtanga yoga, etc. With all of that here, we come to this culminating point of what is kaivalya and how it takes place. Now, just some background. This is the yoga and yoga shastra, which gives the common essentials. Now, in other schools, which talks about, say, Vishishtadvaita, the deities, like Sriman etc., there's the concept of moksha as being sayujya, with being with Parabrahman, etc., that is described, and so on. Yoga takes the common, essential philosophical aspects and describes that in the text. And the same point is covered in various ways. Like in chapter 1, we say, we saw tasyapi nirodhe, sarva nirodha, nirbij samadhi. So chapter 1 goes up to the point where the kaivalya is almost going to happen, the asampragnata samadhi state. Chapter 2, we just saw tad abhavat, sanyoga abhavo hanam, tad drishehe kaivalyam. So that describes what is this hanam, how is this problem to be solved permanently. And from that point of view, kaivalya is brought in. chapter 3 talks about tadvairagyādapi dosha bija kshaye kaivalyaṃ, and then sattva puruṣayoho shuddhisamye kaivalyaṃ. So how the in the chapter 3, once we further understand the states of samadhi, the siddhi, the state of or the understanding of the prakriti purusha, and the role of avidya and the dosha, and then from that point of view kaivalya is brought forth. And in the 4th chapter, where in high detail, the very slow frame by frame journey from the yogi getting to viveka khyati, then dharma vega samadhi, and how exactly what happens, what is the krama of the chitta, and then how the gunas come to a state of kaivalya, and therefore so does the purusha, is described here. So that completes the text, and Sutra 4.34, then the 4th chapter, and of course the text of Yoga Sutra with the Vyasa Bhashya.
So one should revisit the concept of kaivalya, topic of kaivalya, which has appeared, you heard just now, end of the Samadhi Pada. There is a dimension of kaivalya. And in the sadhana pada, avidya bhavat sanyoga bhavaha hanam tadrushehe kaivalyam. Another dimension of kaivalya is getting mentioned in that sutra of the 2nd chapter. And in the 3rd chapter, it is getting mentioned twice. And now in the Kaivalya Pada, it is getting mentioned once. So that will give you the overview of the concept of Kaivalya, which Patanjalas are postulating. So here things to be noted is that svarūpapratiṣṭhā, the citiśaktiriti, gets established into its essential form. So that is irrevocable. It won't be revoked. So therefore it will be kaivalya, eternal. Another aspect is guṇānāṃ pratiprasavaḥ. The gunas have a reversal journey from vishesha to avishesha, avishesha to lingamatra, and lingamatra to alinga. While creation process is alinga to linga, linga to avishesha, avishesha to vishesha. This was discussed in the earlier part of the text in the 2nd chapter. These 4 phases were mentioned. They got mentioned in the 2nd chapter. And for pratiprasava, reverse journey would be grosser getting into subtler. The effects going into the causes. The cause going into its cause. That cause going into its cause and final cause. So that is pratiprasava. So in cosmology, there are 2 aspects mentioned. One is sthiti, or the sarga krama, and laya krama. So this is pralaya, vilaya in kaivalya. So the grosser aspects will get back to their causes, which are subtler than effects, and therefore it will be reversal journey. Vishesha to avishesha, to lingamatra to alinga. And that's how Prakriti will be also having a kaivalya. That's an important point to be noted in this sutra. The kaivalya of the Prakriti is mentioned with respect to the microcosmic creation in each individual, particularly in a yogi. So the Prakriti has a kaivalyam. It goes to irrevocable primordial matter into the primordial matter. And therefore, puruṣārthaśūnyānāṃ pratinashtam was mentioned in earlier sutra in 2nd chapter. So Prakriti also gets back and gets isolated from Purusha. And the Purusha gets isolated from any touch of Prakriti. So Ubhaya Vidha Kaivalyam gets mentioned here, which is special aspect of this sutra. So with that, the text comes to an end, mentioning the spiritual sambonam in the form of kaivalyam, which you just now heard. It is also mentioned as moksha, nirvana in various philosophical systems. So in Chaturvida mokshas are mentioned, in the Adhyatma Shastra, Moksha Shastra, Salokya, Sarupya, Salokya, Sayujya, Samipya, etc. And the Sayujya Mukti is the supreme form of Mukti. And here, metaphysical perspective has been taken by Patanjali, and he mentions the metaphysical dimension of kaivalya, where the prakriti is isolated from purusha and the purusha is isolated from prakriti. Ubhayavida kaivalyam. So that's an interesting point to be noted. Okay.
So with this we stop for today and we read the ending colophon. This is Sri Patanjali Sankhya Pravachane Yoga Shastre Srimad Vyasabhashye kaivalyaṃ. So this ends the 4th chapter of this Sankhya Pravachana Yoga Shastra text, including which is Vyasa's Bhashya on Patanjali's Sutra. So let's recite the slokas on Guruji and stop for today. Vajñānikam pravakritva āsaneshu kalavidam yogabhyase ca tatvajñam vandeham sundaram gurum yoga vriksho hi lokesmin yat preranena vardhitah yogacharya guru tubhyam sundaraya namo namaha. Thank you.
Namaskar all of you.